A kingdom reclaimed, a hope reborn, and a book charred, torn, stained with blood. The Book of Mazarbul, the last record of Balin's dwarves before they vanished forever in the darkness of Moria. Their words written as death closed in. Tonight, we turn its final pages. Before we journey further into the story, if you could take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel, it would help us bring more tales from Arda to life. Now, let's return to the story. To understand the tragedy of the Book of Mazarbul, we must first understand its keeper, Balin, son of Fundin. Balin was no ordinary dwarf. He had fought alongside Thorin Oakenshield on the quest for Erebor, navigating treacherous mountains, defeating dragons, and witnessing the fleeting brilliance of dwarven glory. Yet, when Erebor was reclaimed and Thorin fell, Balin's heart turned westward to another dream, Khazad-dûm, the ancient, glittering realm of Durin the Deathless. For centuries, the dwarves had remembered Moria as the crowning jewel of their civilization, a city of mithril so prized that even the elves of Eregim had envied its mines. Its halls were carved with artistry rivaling that of men and elves, its lamps and pillars echoing with both craft and reverence. But it had lain silent, shadowed, and abandoned, overrun by orcs, goblins, and whispers of creatures far older and darker. Balin's desire to reclaim Moria was not born purely of greed. It was a mixture of reverence, pride, and hope. To retake Khazad-dûm was to restore a lineage, not merely of rulers, but of a people whose identity was inseparable from stone and song. This venture was a moral and philosophical statement as much as a military campaign. The assertion that dwarves could reclaim not just territory, but dignity. Balin's expedition was measured and deliberate. He gathered companions who were not merely warriors, but craftsmen, smiths, and chroniclers. They carried tools for building, for forging, and for recording. Every action was steeped in the ethos of dwarves: persistence, meticulousness, and loyalty. Yet, even as Balin marched to Moria's west gate, there was a shadow over his hope. Tolkien's texts remind us that the reclaiming of a lost kingdom is never free from consequence. The deeper one digs into the mines of history, the more one confronts echoes of past hubris. The halls of Khazad-dûm were empty, yes, but emptiness in Tolkien's world is rarely benign. Balin's steps into those long-abandoned corridors were steps into both physical and moral darkness. And the Book of Mazarbul would come to bear witness to every triumph, every miscalculation, and every moment where hope met despair. In these first pages, we begin to see that the story is not merely about a dwarven colony. It is about the human, or rather, dwarven condition itself. The interplay of courage and pride, the balance of ambition and foresight, and the fragility of even the most steadfast resolve when confronted by forces beyond comprehension. Why Moria? Because Khazad-dûm was more than stone and metal. It was the heart of dwarven history, the city of Durin himself, whose name resounded through the ages. Mithril, the true silver, lay in veins deep beneath its mountains, glimmering like captured starlight. Its halls were carved with precision and artistry unmatched in Middle-earth, corridors echoing with songs of labor and devotion. To reclaim Moria was to touch the divine legacy of the dwarves, to walk where ancestors had walked, to hold in one's hands the proof that dwarven skill, endurance, and pride could endure even the long shadows of history. Balin believed this restoration was possible. He envisioned not merely a foothold in the east, but a thriving dwarven realm reborn from dust and ruin. The expedition he led was no haphazard raid. Supplies were carefully counted, fortifications were planned. Companions were chosen for loyalty, courage, and expertise. Craftsmen carried chisels and hammers alongside swords and axes. Chroniclers carried ink and parchment, and warriors carried not only weapons, but a shared conviction that their cause was just. It was, in essence, an assertion of dwarven philosophy, that life is defined by creation, by perseverance, and by the courage to confront darkness, both literal and metaphorical. At first, hope burned bright. The dwarves reclaimed the West Gate, swept out remnants of orc bands, and unearthed chambers lost for centuries. The Book of Mazarbul records these early triumphs with a steady hand. Meticulous accounts of restored halls, the discovery of ancient treasures, and Balin hailed as Lord of Moria, a title both aspirational and earned. Scholars of Tolkien's works note that these victories, though small in scale, were monumental in spirit. Each carved stone, each repaired hall, each newly lit chamber was a testament to dwarves' resilience and their unwavering commitment to memory, history, and craft. Yet, shadows were never far. Even in victory, the text reveals unease. Orc raids persisted on the periphery. Subtle hints of unease begin to appear in the entries. Lines once precise and methodical begin to show strain. Some scribes pause mid-word. Ink is smudged with both exhaustion and fear. The Book of Mazarbul, in this way, is more than a chronicle. It is a mirror of dwarves' mental and emotional state, an evolving testament to human-like vulnerability beneath unyielding courage. What began as triumph slowly shades into anxiety, and what began as a calculated venture becomes a test of endurance, fortitude, and judgment. This juxtaposition, victory shadowed by looming peril, is central to understanding Balin's dream. He sought not only gold or glory, but to restore a civilization that had survived and thrived against unimaginable odds. The philosophical weight of this dream cannot be understated. The reclaiming of Khazad-dûm was both an act of love and an assertion of identity. And yet, as Tolkien reminds us repeatedly, even the noblest endeavors can carry seeds of doom. In the depths of Moria, past triumphs and ancestral pride meet an unseen force that will test every moral, every choice, and every heartbeat of the dwarves who dared to follow Balin. The Book of Mazarbul is not a polished chronicle. It is fragments, scorched by fire and smeared with blood, a living testament to the collapse of hope in real time. Unlike histories crafted in libraries or courts, this book was written by many hands, often in the midst of battle, exhaustion, and fear. Each line carries the rhythm of life under siege, meticulous at first, gradually unraveling as despair encroaches. In its pages, we hear dwarves not as legends or mythic heroes, but as people, craftsmen, warriors, scribes, clinging to memory while chaos encroaches. The entries themselves reveal layers of culture, craft, and character. Dwarves chronicled victories with precision, noting the halls restored, the number of orcs slain, and the supplies secured. Yet these records are not mere statistics. They are imbued with pride and reverence for ancestral workmanship. Every measured step in restoring Khazad-dûm is an act of homage to Durin and the generations before him. Scholars emphasize that this attention to detail mirrors real-world human behavior under siege. When survival is uncertain, the act of recording history itself becomes a lifeline, a means of asserting existence against oblivion. As the colony pressed deeper into Moria, the book begins to shift in tone. Entries become shorter, lines break mid-thought, ink smudges with tremors of fatigue and terror. Pleas for aid appear, sometimes addressed to distant dwarves in Erebor, sometimes merely as personal affirmations, a record that someone, somewhere, might know what happened here. The voices within the pages transform, from confident leaders to fearful defenders, from chroniclers of victories to witnesses of slow decay. Here, Tolkien's genius lies in the interplay of narrative and medium. The book itself becomes an instrument of storytelling, reflecting not only events, but the psychological toll of facing overwhelming darkness. The Book of Mazarbul is remarkable in its realism. Balin's death is recorded plainly, almost clinically, yet it strikes with profound gravity. Balin, slain by an arrow at Mirmir, the entry reads. No flourish, no eulogy, just a statement of fact. The understated prose amplifies its tragedy. The king's fall is no longer heroic spectacle, but a quiet moment of irreversible loss. Following entries fragment further, becoming frantic and disjointed, each scribble echoing the terror of dwarves surrounded, doors battered, axes clashing, and drums sounding through the darkness. The reader, or listener, experiences the collapse in real time, as though standing among the last defenders of a doomed kingdom. Through it all, the book maintains a startling intimacy. It is not just history, it is human or dwarven experience distilled into writing. Scholars note that it serves simultaneously as chronicle, memorial, and testament. The Book of Mazarbul embodies a moral and philosophical tension central to Tolkien's work: courage tempered by mortality, pride tempered by humility, hope tempered by the inevitability of fate. Each line reminds us that even in the face of certain doom, beings of conscience and craft strive to leave a record, to assert identity, and to refuse erasure. Then comes the turning point. Shadows that had lingered at the edges of the colony now pressed relentlessly against every door, every corridor. Orc raids became nightly assaults, their numbers seemingly endless, their cruelty precise and unrelenting. Supplies dwindled, watchposts fell silent. Leaders who had once commanded with steady hands were slain or incapacitated. In this crucible, the Book of Mazarbul becomes not a chronicle of triumph, but a litany of survival, and ultimately, despair. Balin himself met his end at Mirmir, struck by an orc arrow in a moment of quiet heroism. The book records it plainly, almost dispassionately. A line or two, the words blunt, the sentence as precise as a stone-cutting tool. And yet the gravity is immeasurable. For Balin was more than a leader. He was the embodiment of dwarven hope and ambition, the soul of the Moria restoration. His death signaled more than the loss of a king. It marked the irreversible collapse of the colony's spirit. After Balin's fall, entries fragment further, the writing frantic, shaky, smudged with blood and soot. Each sentence grows shorter, harsher, more desperate. The scribes record encounters in real time. Corridors filled with orcs, walls trembling from battering, axes clashing, drums echoing through stone. Pleas for aid are scribbled in fading ink, often interrupted mid-word, the pen dropping as the writers themselves fall. The chronology becomes chaotic, a mirror of the colony's disintegrating order. What was once precise and methodical becomes fragmented, almost illegible, the literary equivalent of life collapsing into chaos. The final entries are the most harrowing. Lines are broken, letters smeared, words trail off into nothing. We see fear made tangible in ink and parchment. One entry records a door being forced, the thrum of drums reverberating, the clash of metal, and then silence. The narrative ends mid-word, as though the last writer, confronted by death, dropped the pen and vanished into darkness. It is history ending in real time, a story unfinished, a civilization recorded in its final heartbeat. The Book of Mazarbul is not only a record of events, but a direct conduit to the dwarves' final consciousness, their pride and courage etched alongside the terror of their final moments. Centuries later, when the Fellowship of the Ring enters Moria, they encounter the remnants of this history. Gandalf opens the ruined book, reading aloud lines that are simultaneously chronicle and eulogy. The words echo through the chamber like ghosts. Balin and his companions speak to us across time, not as mythic heroes, but as people who lived, hoped, fought, and ultimately fell. In that moment, the Fellowship does not merely discover history, they witness it, feel it, and mourn it. The drums and axes of the book's final entries are mirrored in the stillness of the tomb, a haunting reminder of mortality and courage. The Book of Mazarbul is more than charred parchment and broken words. It is the essence of dwarven courage, pride, and the stubborn insistence to be remembered, even in the face of certain death. In Tolkien's world, objects are rarely neutral. They carry history, memory, and moral weight. This book is no weapon, no jewel, yet it wields an emotional power unmatched. The voices of the fallen dwarves echo across centuries, reminding us that sometimes the most haunting artifacts are not forged in metal or imbued with magic, but written in ink and blood. Philosophically, the book confronts readers with the tension between hope and futility. Balin's dream was noble, rooted in ancestral reverence and a vision of restoration. Yet even the best-laid plans cannot always withstand the tide of fate, the relentless encroachment of darkness, or the limits of mortality. The entries show dwarves clinging to order, ritual, and craft as their walls crumble around them, an ultimate act of defiance, a moral affirmation that identity and memory matter even when survival does not. Scholars often compare the Book of Mazarbul to human records of doomed expeditions, noting Tolkien's insight into the universal impulse to document, to assert existence, and to leave behind a trace of self when confronted by annihilation. Culturally, the book reveals the depth of dwarven society, their meticulous record-keeping, their pride in craftsmanship, their sense of community, and their unyielding loyalty to kin and king. Every entry, even in its final desperation, underscores values central to dwarven life: perseverance, precision, and a belief in the worth of their civilization. The narrative arc, from cautious optimism to cautious victory, to encroaching fear to utter despair, mirrors the moral and practical lessons Tolkien embedded across Middle-earth: that courage is never simple, that pride is double-edged, and that the noblest endeavors may end in tragedy. Yet in tragedy, there is resonance. The Book of Mazarbul does not simply tell of death. It immortalizes the act of defiance, the refusal to vanish silently. Centuries later, when Gandalf reads aloud in Moria, he bridges time. The dwarves speak once more. Their story becomes a meditation on memory, courage, and the ethical responsibility to honor those who came before. The book's haunting quality lies not only in its documentation of violence and loss, but in its affirmation of life, identity, and culture under the most extreme duress. A burned book, a fallen colony, a people who wrote their last words as shadows closed in. The Book of Mazarbul is history turned epitaph, hope turned elegy, a warning and a tribute. It asks us to reflect: were these dwarves defined by pride, by folly, or by undying courage? Perhaps all three, intertwined, inseparable, and unforgettable. In the end, the most profound artifacts are not those that glitter in light, but those that whisper across the ages, carrying with them the echoes of lives lived, hopes fought for, and the haunting beauty of stories unfinished. Share your thoughts below, and if you want more tales of Middle-earth's haunting relics, join me as we uncover the fate of Celebrimbor, the tortured smith who defied Sauron.